Hey, it's me, Flango, and I think we're pretty late in the decks. Let me check here. I just did the Aqua Hydra deck. 3 more decks to go. So this one belongs to Mattp0110, and it is a Zera deck. I'm pretty sure it's pretty normal. Ephemeral Garden, there's 1. Sandstorm, 3. This is interesting. So Sandstorm, I've always said, is a super cool card because it's basically sludge. And if you combo it with Dunestrider, it's really, really cool. But let's see what happens here. Barrier 2. Okay, if Zera wasn't the king, I would say maybe we're looking at like a Sandstorm aggro, which I think would be kind of cool. But clearly we're not, so let's keep going. Quicksand. Sure. I think Quicksand wasn't a good pick for this tournament because, I mean, the flavor of the whatever this period is, patch, I guess, is just all rush to big cards if you're going to play aggro at all. So, like, Control usually does run cards that kill cheap cards, like Quicksand, but Control actually runs cards that beats the meta. That's the plan with Control, right? And so, Quicksand, it unfortunately, it doesn't beat the meta. And when you're going into a tournament like this where you don't know there's a meta, you obviously you can't build around that, but then that almost means that you can't effectively build Control, right? So that's why I talk about bringing aggro all the time, is I probably would have, just because there's no meta and we don't really know what to control, right? But you had an idea, like if you beat Bog Dweller and if you beat Zera, then you probably do pretty well. But anyways, I digress. Ephemeral Garden, Sandstorm, Barrier, Quicksand, Wings, Meteor. Oh man. Also, Wings was an unfortunate tech choice. I think this deck was probably made a long time ago, and just he didn't tech it. Three Oasis, 2 Dune Strider. Interesting. It's a lot of Oasises, I guess. I couldn't think of the name. Death from Beyond. Sure, that's a finisher. I've actually been converted to using other finishers because it is not like the most mana efficient card. Like you could do 21 for 30 with Infernal. Um, I'll have to do some sort of like calculation on what the most mana efficient finishers are. And then the last card is Star Eater, which I don't own. So I'll represent it with Psycho Fiend. So, okay. Start by cost. I actually really like going from, like with Zera, scaling up to Star Eater. I think that's a really cool combo. You have the side jump, which combos the Star Eater. Same thing with Death from Beyond. If you're gonna get to Star Eater, then getting Death from Beyond is cool. But if we sort by cost, I guess this card here, if you have Force, then you might as well pick a card that's going to live forever. With Death from Beyond, I mean, usually you can just force and hit, but well, actually no, that's a lie. I think that Death from Beyond is fine here. Um, it just heals itself completely to full, anyways. So what I actually should be saying is something a lot cheaper that does similar damage, which, I mean, you can look at Northern Giant for that, which also benefits from the Force. Does 42 for 22, or 22 for 42, I should say. And if you look at Death from Beyond, I mean, it's 51 for 25. This is just more efficient, I believe. I mean, this is 9 less mana, which, I mean, obviously it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but I wonder if, like, there's a way that, because so you're only getting your mana from Zera and Ephemeral Garden, right? So this is giving you, like, 5s. Let's say this gives you, like, 20. And you only have the 1, which, I mean, there's no way to heal it, so eventually it's going to die. But whatever. You have Ephemeral Garden, and then you have... Wait. Yeah, okay. And then you have Zera. And Zera gives you, what, 16 per turn? So we've got 16, I don't know, like, what are some multiples of 16? We've got 16 times, like, 4 turns. We'll give you, what is that, 64? And then, okay, so 16 times 3 turns is 48. Can you, yeah, so with 48 you can afford a Northern Giant, and you can't afford a Death from Beyond. You could also interestingly ramp up to Volcano. Volcano with Force allows you to kind of hit with everything, but I don't really like it. Then Raiden would work. It's 31 for 18. But I'm not saying that this is overall, like, I'm not saying that you have to, like, replace Death from Beyond. I'm just thinking about other cards. I did initially think that Death from Beyond wasn't optimal, and I don't think it has to be optimal, but I do think that it's a fine card. It takes advantage of Force. It does the most damage in the game. You can, like, if you find yourself not being able to afford Death from Beyond, but being able to afford Northern Giant in a lot of situations, then go with that one. But otherwise, so like, the only reason that I'm even thinking about that is because you got Zera, and then you've got Ephemeral Garden. Zera makes 16 per turn, which is quite a lot. But assuming you're paying for your Star Eater first, I think Star Eater is like 50 or 60. I don't actually know exactly how much it is, but I mean, let's say you're paying for Death from Beyond, right? Then, or even Psycho Fiend. Let's say you're running Psycho Fiend. So that already takes you 3 turns of just being on Oasis. And then to pay for Death from Beyond, after that, that's going to be another 4. I think you have enough leftover mana after 3. Yeah, you do. So it's going to be like another 4 turns to pay for Death from Beyond. And yeah, like that. I think that, like, well, I guess it only takes you 3 turns to pay for Death from Beyond. After you take 3 to pay for Psycho Fiend. Like, that's two cards, and they're very strong cards. But that's without factoring in that you have to pay for Barrier, Wings. Admittedly, Barrier was a little bit cheaper. And then I don't even know if you're ever gonna get to Meteor, right? So it just feels like, and I understand that you get to choose between Meteor, Death from Beyond. Like, there's definitely situations where, like, Meteor is fine, and then you've got, like, you want 27 rather than 25 damage because that's how you kill or something. But those are mostly fringe cases, especially if you are ramping up to Star Eater. And then with Star Eater, I'm just imagining it's going to be so much more expensive, right? Because you're gonna have to spend like 7 or 8 turns just standing on an Oasis, and that's before talking about playing any of these cards. So I do feel like this is a control deck, but it doesn't have like any minions. It's all this top end. So you're gonna be playing run away from the aggro deck for super long, and then you're not gonna do anything. And like Barrier can help, but at the end of the day, I think that most aggro decks just beat this. Obviously, if they play low cost cards, then you can spend a turn to play Oasis, and that's fine. And then you can spend another turn to play Quicksand, as long as they stay on the Oasis. But then Swamp decks have a hard time with this, this has a hard time against like swamp decks because they can just get rid of your Oasis. And if you're spending a card or a turn to play Dune Strider, then it's really tough because like you can start to run and then Dune Strider the spot where you're standing. But then obviously the weak cards are not going to come in. So I think this is like the slowest way to do it. And that's why when I chose to play Zera, I did not play Oasis. I played Wasteland. But enough of plugging Wasteland. Let me show you my Oasis. Alright, so similar ideas here, I believe. We ramped up to Death from Beyond. I chose not to use Meteor, I chose to use Death from Beyond. We both ran a lot of Sandstorms because I think that they're a decent card. And I didn't run any Force, so Sandstorm was kind of my way of confirming a hit for Death from Beyond. We still both ran Oasis. I only ran 2 because I think 3 is a little bit excessive. Especially like you kind of saw there's not that much terrain utility. Like you see a little bit of swamp. That's kind of it. Like yeah. So, but then I ran Lava Golem, and Lava Golem is, I mean, it used to do 10 attack, and it's kind of interesting because as long as you're healing 1, then you're actually increasing its life by an extra turn. And the idea was obviously just like a bodyguard, like get off of my Zera, I'm trying to ramp up here. And then by that, like, yeah. But it's also like a good aggro card, and that's sort of like, this is kind of like Sandstorm, their king, play Lava Golem, play Death from Beyond, and then they're dead. But, you know. I don't think Mana in the Rough is necessary to run. And, like, this is a very similar deck, and I have similar complaints. But at least I have a card in here that can, like, sort of hit the enemy and say, like, yo, get off my king. I do 10 damage per turn. It was 10 back then. So I think if you were to, and also like there's so much more speed, right? So we can ramp up to Death and Beyond quicker. And then obviously I would have probably put in a larger card at the end, like Star Eater if I had it. I'm not really happy with most of these, although Desire's Guardian would be an interesting choice. Yeah, it has lots of health. I like Desire's Guardian here actually, or Shenlong even, but Shenlong gets rid of my Oasises. Oasis. But yeah, so like you can kind of do that and ramp up super quickly with more of these. But I think that probably like it doesn't have to be Lava Golem, right? Like we can just play like Castle Knight. Ooh, Castle Knight's a pretty good defender. Um, or we can play Exchange actually. Exchanging a Dune Strider is like 2 turns, but you're also getting the Zera, so you're getting like 40 plus. I don't know. I guess it's only 16 times 2, so 32. So you're getting like 70 mana in like 2 turns. That's really good actually. And then you can just play Star Eater right away, and then you're kind of set. Like Star Eater can't defend Zera too well, but it does a decent job. Or you could, instead of playing Star Eater first, you could play a card. I mean, you could play like Geomancers. I think Geomancer would be fine here. Um, or Inferno. I think Inferno is a cool card because it's cheap and it can kill things. And then you can just Oasis wherever it hits. Shadow Lurkers, same idea. It's just bigger health, really. Less attack, but you know. And then I feel like it's not too bad to play like a Bog Dweller or Chimera either early. You're just getting a little bit expensive for a bodyguard. So yeah, I'd probably like stick with something like Geomancer here. But overall, I do think that like something like that would be pretty cool, where you like exchange really quick, get 70 mana, and then just play Bog Dweller or Chimera, and it just does enough damage and has enough health to keep cards off of you. The one that you really need to stop is Shadow Lurker, 41 health. So I don't know, like you have to do a little over 20 damage each turn. I don't know if you're gonna get to do that though, unless you're like running Northern Giant, but then or Aqua Hydra, but again, not your deck. So anything? Okay, sort by attack. What actually can do 21 damage per turn? Yeah. I actually wonder if just Oasis should ramp up to Desire's Guardian because Zera can make enough mana to keep Desire's Guardian safe. And so then he can use control, which I mean, you know, he can use his shoot if he needs to, but he can just always be attacking is my idea really. I don't know. I think that's probably the best way to make this work. But obviously other like Oasis Zeras ramp up to stuff like Star Eater Taurus Dragon. And then the way that they stay alive is with Castle Knight. So, and I mean Reinhardt actually used Exchange, so that's exactly what I'm what I'm saying we should use here. Um, but yeah, overall, like I think it's not like a failure to make this archetype. Although I've kind of grown to be unsure on what I think of this archetype. It is like this deck is not like a complete failure. It's just like some unfortunate tech choices and just a lack of good early game. But I mean, if you replace those, um, I guess those quicksands with Castle Knight, and then maybe replace one of the wings with something else, and then I don't know, for like get. Mm, hmm. Yeah, no, that's kind of fine as is. I mean, if you're only gonna run one Star Eater, which you are because you only own one probably, I wonder if it's correct to run Draw, just so that you have like a better chance of getting your Star Eater. But also like I want Exchange in this deck, so I think you'd probably just get rid of Meteor and add an Exchange, especially if you're gonna have like only one Ephemeral Garden. It's kind of weird not to have any exchanges, because obviously like before you ramp up, you're gone, right? So yeah, that's sort of my take on this deck. I think that like overall the archetype was right. It was just wrong early game. Cool. Thanks for watching.